Games, indeed.
Birthright suffers from the same problems as Revelation.
It's forcefully catered for fan service and little else.
It's like a smaller pile of shit versus a bigger one. Still shit.
Yeah.
This is why Fire Emblem Fates is a bad Fire Emblem game. Just as Fates
You hit it.
and Camilla did.
Stop. How did this happen? How did Birthright become one of the most hated games in the franchise? How has it become the epitome of mediocrity? Let's back up. The year is 2015. Fire Emblem is back in full swing. Intelligent Systems is rolling in their awakening dough. They've evaded the chopping block. Nintendo walks in and gives them one order: make another game that will sell like hell. Okay, easy enough, thought Intelligent Systems. We'll just make an Awakening clone. People liked it once, so they'll like it again, right? So Intelligent Systems created Fates, an unnamed continent where two kingdoms are constantly fighting. One looks like post-apocalyptic medieval Europe, and the other is literally just Japan. Is Nintendo trying to say something here? Anyway, this wouldn't be any normal Fire Emblem game. This one would have moral ambiguity. Fancy, huh? So Intelligent Systems went on their way and created a split in the story, where you, the main character, could choose to side with either Nor or Hoshido. They also released this bomb-ass trailer showing the split. The fan base was hyped. Then it was revealed that Intelligent Systems had pulled a fast one. Fates was split into two individual games, Conquest and Birthright. In order to side with the kingdom, you had to buy the respective $40 game.
You what?
People were not too pleased, to say the least. So the internet did what it does best: it tried to cheat the system. People quickly found out that Conquest was considered to be the harder of the two, so people naturally rushed to it. While all this was transpiring, a vocal minority of the community preached their disdain. They had hated Awakening in its waifuism and saw Fates as the next step towards total destruction. They slammed Fates, calling out anything they could, from characters to the gameplay to, what the hell is she wearing? Slowly, the echoes became louder and louder, supplanting themselves into the general mindset of the Fire Emblem community. Fates bad. Let me clarify, the game sold exceptionally well. Many people loved it, but it was the active community that was displeased. The criticisms slowly became part of the Fates image, being mindlessly echoed over and over again until it became part of the game's narrative. Over time, Conquest was spared, as people hailed the game for being challenging and mechanically sound. That left poor Birthright to lie in the swamp of mindless hatred and disgust. Nobody wanted to touch the cursed game, lest they be called a casual. So for 5 years, Birthright has sat in the darkness of obscurity, being shunned by the community. But ladies and gentlemen, it's 2020. I think it's about time we give this game a fair shot. As always, I gotta rush through some rules so I don't get shot myself. This is my own opinion and experience with the game. I'm just some bored college student making crappy videos to kill time. This is not the holy grail of analysis, nor the antithesis of objectivity. My points will be based on my experience and how they compare with other games in the series. If you disagree or have something to say about my analysis, feel free to leave a comment below. Alright, let's go. First, I need to address an idea that has implanted itself into the community. A common misconception is that Conquest was designed for veterans, while Birthright was designed for casuals or newcomers. This is blatantly wrong. It assumes that veterans of the series only play Fire Emblem for its strategic challenge, ignoring RPG elements that have coexisted since the beginning of the series. It also assumes that newcomers of the series cannot handle a challenge. This is the same flawed logic Intelligent Systems used when sending games to the West, which is why we have Japanese-only titles and dumbed-down difficulties. This classification also fails to accurately describe either title's gameplay. Birthright's mechanical design revolves around choke points, large fields with terrain, and seemingly random enemy placement. This is reminiscent of the GBA titles, which employed a very similar gameplay aesthetic. Bait and switch mechanics, turtling, and enemy phase-based combat are all present and encouraged, making Birthright's mechanical design akin to Blazing Sword, not Awakening. On the other hand, Conquest is intricately designed and balanced. The maps are carefully created to reward strategic prowess, and the enemies are placed to punish turtling and other classic techniques. This method of balancing and design mirrors Fire Emblem 12, New Mystery of the Emblem. The game plays like a puzzle, forcing the player to make precise and careful movements. So why does this reclassification of Birthright and Conquest matter? It matters because pinning Birthright as a game meant for quote-unquote casuals is detrimental to the series and the community. This stigma discourages people from trying a game that is meant to appeal to those who enjoy the GBA titles and the 3DS presentation. For many years, I purposely steered away from Birthright because I was told over and over again that it was meant for newcomers, not somebody who has played other games in the series. We are actively discouraging people from playing Fire Emblem. I believe this dated classification stems from the fact that Birthright is classified as a quote-unquote open map game because it has the option to grind for EXP and items outside of the game's chapter progression. Conquest does not have this option natively, but can be accessed through DLC, meaning the choice to grind is still there. Additionally, Birthright's implementation of this open map game is literally a button that says skirmish under the chapter progression. It gives the player full autonomy over the amount of resources in grinding. If your reason for not playing Birthright is because it's an open map game, then don't use the skirmish feature. Unlike Shadows of Valentia, the feature remains entirely optional and does not restrict your gameplay whatsoever. I'll admit, even without grinding, Birthright isn't terribly difficult, even on Lunatic. It has a massive margin of error, allowing for more flexibility and strategy in gameplay. Despite it being easier than Conquest, I'm here to defend its gameplay. To clarify, I am not claiming that Birthright's gameplay is better than Conquest's, but I am claiming that it's not nearly as bad as people make it out to be. Don't believe me? Let's check it out. Despite the map design and enemy placement differences, both games feature the exact same mechanics. The reason that Birthright's gameplay remains fresh is because many of Fate's mechanics were conceived to reward strategic playing. The first mechanic that was revamped is the pair-up system. Intelligent Systems broke the mechanic into two separate pieces, attack and guard stance. If two units are adjacent to each other and not paired up, the supporting unit can attack the enemy similar to the pair-up attack in Awakening. This attack is guaranteed to proc, but not to hit. However, if the unit in combat is paired up with an ally, they lose the attack stance buff and instead receive the guard stance buff. This mechanic works by building up a defense meter whenever the player attacks or is attacked. Once the meter is filled, the next enemy attack will be negated by the supporting ally. This improved pair-up system does three things. It de-incentivizes juggernauting by splitting the attack and defense mechanics. It makes the game more predictable as both attack and guard stances are no longer RNG based, and it increases the nuance and strategic complexity of the game. It is overall a fantastic improvement from its first iteration back in 2012. Another mechanic meant to balance the game are the growth rates. Fates has some of the lowest HP growth rates in the entire series, with Corrin clocking in at just 45% per level. For reference, Roy has an 80% HP growth and Lyn has a 70% HP growth. This drop in HP is meant to prevent units from tanking large swaths of enemies and relying on defensive skills, such as Soul. Even Intelligent Systems knew how strong that skill was in Awakening. Pair this with lower growth rates and base stat totals, and you get a game that rewards the strategic placement of your allies in and out of combat. Weapons have unlimited durability, but are balanced to fit a specific use. A hand axe may give the player 1-2 range, but they cannot double or use skills or criticals. Silver weapons may do more damage than iron weapons, but they are made to debuff the player after combat, discouraging their use during the enemy phase. All in all, I believe this new weapon system is a boon to Fate's mechanics, as it trades the allocation of resources in the form of weapons with strategic nuance during combat. This is all in an effort to disincentivize enemy phase tanking. Before I go on, let me put this out there. Fate's mechanics are not perfect. Forging and the Royals' personal weapons are absolutely busted and unfortunately cloud the intricate weapon system. The My Castle is a neat addition, but locks many features behind interacting with other players, which is not ideal in a single-player SRPG. Although these features do deter from Fate's mechanics and gameplay, I feel that the overall system is still exceptionally well crafted and worthy of praise. The mechanics I've laid out apply to all 3 routes, but let's focus on Birthright. Like I've said before, the first 18 Birthright only chapters are fairly straightforward. This is because the maps are designed around choke points and ganging up on enemies. Your units are generally stronger than the enemy, but weak enough that they cannot run in solo hordes of flyers or cavaliers. The difficulty is fairly moderate. You will likely not have to reset if you plan your moves, but if you get too sloppy, the game will punish you accordingly. Once you hit chapter 23, the game's difficulty spikes. This is because of 2 reasons. The enemies become stronger than your own units, and the maps no longer benefit the player. Huge fields with hordes of powerful enemies rush you, applying pressure which forces you to either boss rush or plan every move. Let me take a moment to address this dichotomy in gameplay. I personally do not like the spike in power because I felt that it was too steep. I would have preferred a gradual increase in difficulty, starting around chapter 16 and working its way up to the endgame. Birthright felt like a game split in 2, where the first half encompasses your units running around massacring Norians, and the second half showcases your ass getting beat. Regardless, I still enjoyed the overall gameplay, as the easy beginning allowed me to become invested in the characters and setting, while the difficult ending appealed to my strategic craving. Fate's mechanics combined with Birthright's map design ensure that the game is not too difficult but rewards strategic prowess and planning. The game throws weaker units and uses advantageous maps, but balances the game around using all of your allies effectively. It provides an engaging blend of classic and modern Fire Emblem. Before I briefly touch on the characters and story, let me address a quick point. A classic gripe I hear is that Ryoma trivializes Birthright. This statement drives me up the wall. A unit being strong does not mean they trivialize the game. In order to trivialize a game, the given unit must be so powerful that all strategic thought is rendered useless because it doesn't matter. Ryoma is strong and probably your best unit, but he does not trivialize Birthright because Fate's mechanics are literally designed to prevent this. He has incredible offensive power, but cannot reliably enemy phase past chapter 22. Nobody can, for the last 6 chapters of the game. Is he good? For sure. Does he disregard all need for strategic planning and foresight? No. He can get 2-shot like the rest of your units in Birthright. By this definition, I would say there's only one unit in the entire series that trivializes their respective game: Robin. Another benchmark people use for trivializing the game is if the given unit can solo their respective game. This argument is stupid, because there's at least a character from every single game in the franchise that can solo their respective game. Sigurd, Marcus, Percival, Seth, Titania, Hard, just to name a few. Hell, even Xander can solo Conquest Lunatic. So does that mean he trivializes the game and therefore it's not worth playing? No, they're all strong units but require their allies and strategic playing to reliably achieve positive results. Ryoma is no different. Now onto the characters and story. This section will be spoiler free as this video is meant to encourage those who have not played the game, so I will keep it brief. Korn is still painful, but his actions make logical sense and his pining for unconditional peace is toned down compared to Conquest because he knows he cannot reason with King Garen. I personally like the Hoshiden royals individually, but their collective interactions felt lacking. Their retainers are okay, but I felt no strong sense of connection. However, I found that I grew to like the Conquest retainers and cast much more because of Birthright. We see the Norian royals at their worst, and get a glimpse of their character and motivations. The only exception to this is Xander, but overall, I found the story to be moderately compelling, but grew a deeper connection and appreciation for the Norian cast. I'll make a full-length video about Fate's story some other day. All you need to know is that Birthright's story is decent and the characters are passable. At the end of the day, Birthright is an easy to moderate game that encourages classic Fire Emblem tactics and behaviors. This makes it the perfect game for people who are looking for something to wind down with, enjoy without having to put too much mental thought into, or just looking for a mid-range 3DS game that plays like a GBA game. I found the game incredibly enjoyable, as the difficulty is just high enough that I have to put some thought into my movements, but low enough that I'm not resetting once a map like Conquest Lunatic. I believe many people write this game off because it has a lower difficulty than Conquest, but I believe that's what makes it great. A game doesn't need to be balls hard difficult to be enjoyable. Lunatic Birthright is the perfect balance between modern and classic Fire Emblem. If you have any reservations about playing the game because of what the community has told you, I encourage you to put these aside and try the game if you have the means. I can't guarantee that you'll love the game, but I can hope that it brings you some sort of enjoyment the same way it did for me. I want the community to give this game a fair shot, and look past its muddled legacy that has plagued it. You don't have to like Birthright, I just ask that you try it. I'm Aldwin, and I'm out.